What if I told you that one human speaking a single sentence in a forgotten alien language could bring the most powerful galactic empire to its knees? What if that human was just a translator who got his job because everyone else was busy? And what if that one sentence accidentally made him the most powerful person in the galaxy? Picture this. You're sitting in the most important diplomatic meeting in human history. 12 alien species around a crystalline table that probably costs more than Earth's entire GDP. And everyone's staring at you like you just pulled a grenade pin. Why? Because I just spoke a single sentence in a language that's been dead for 3,000 years. The Zarathi delegation goes completely silent. Their translator AI literally crashes with a sound like breaking glass. And Lyra, the lead Zarathi negotiator, who's been treating me like furniture for the past week, suddenly looks at me like I'm holding a loaded weapon. "That's a banned war language," she whispers, her silver eyes wide with something between terror and fascination. You are not supposed to even know that exists. But here's the thing they didn't expect. Humans don't just learn languages. We devour them. We dig into their bones, their history, their secrets. And sometimes we find things that were meant to stay buried. Let me back up 3 weeks. My name is Elijah Chen, and I'm what you might call a professional nobody. While humanity's best and brightest were conquering space and making first contact, I was sitting in dusty archives translating dead alien texts that most people figured were just glorified grocery lists. I specialize in xenolinguistics, specifically extinct communication systems. Not exactly the career path that gets you invited to diplomatic summits. But apparently when every single official translator fails to crack the Zarathi language patterns, they start scraping the bottom of the barrel. That's how I ended up on a transport ship to Kepler Station sitting across from Lyra Velthon, the Zarathi Empire's youngest ambassador. She's everything you'd expect from an advanced alien species. Tall, graceful with these crystalline features that seem carved from starlight itself. Beautiful sure, but with the warmth of liquid nitrogen. "Human Chen," she says, not even looking up from her holographic briefings. "I trust you understand the gravity of this situation. 7 previous translation attempts have failed catastrophically. Your species' continued membership in the Galactic Trade Consortium depends entirely on successful communication." I nod, trying not to mention that I'm basically humanity's last hope, and I got the job because everyone else was busy. But here's what she doesn't know. 3 years ago, while digitizing artifacts from a crashed exploration vessel, I found something that shouldn't exist. A data crystal containing what appeared to be Proto-Zarathi text. Not the modern sanitized version they use for trade agreements. This was older, rawer, filled with grammatical structures that made my translation software have what I can only describe as a nervous breakdown. I spent months working on it in secret. Not because I was trying to hide anything, but because academic careers have been ruined over claims of discovering lost alien languages. But the more I translated, the more I realized this wasn't just ancient Zarathi. This was something far more significant. The crystal contained fragments of what appeared to be command protocols, technical specifications, and strangest of all, repeated references to something called the domain key and collapse authority. I never published my findings. Honestly, I wasn't even sure they were real. But I memorized every word, every phrase, every grammatical quirk. Call it professional obsession, or maybe just the human inability to let mysteries go unsolved. Now sitting across from Lyra as our transport approaches Kepler Station, I'm starting to wonder if those late nights in my cramped office might actually matter. Because if there's one thing humans excel at, it's turning useless knowledge into unexpected advantages. "Tell me," I asked Lyra, trying to sound casual, "when did your people stop using the ceremonial language variants, the really old stuff?" For the first time since we met, she looks directly at me. And I swear I see something flicker behind those silver eyes, not just surprise, but something deeper. Something like fear. "We don't discuss the old tongues with outsiders," she says curtly. "They're considered culturally sensitive." But the way she says it tells me everything I need to know. Those aren't just culturally sensitive, they're dangerous. And somehow, without meaning to, I've just learned to speak a language that scares one of the galaxy's most advanced civilizations. The transport shudders as we dock with the Kepler station. Through the viewport, I can see the massive diplomatic complex where representatives from dozens of worlds are gathering. All of them more advanced than us. All of them holding humanity's future in their hands. But for the first time since this whole thing started, I'm not feeling like David facing Goliath. I'm feeling like David who just realized he's been carrying around a nuclear warhead instead of a slingshot. Time to find out what happens when humans stop playing by everyone else's rules. The main diplomatic chamber is exactly what you'd expect from a galactic summit. Soaring crystal walls, holographic displays showing trade routes that span half the galaxy, and enough alien dignitaries to populate a small moon. But what hits me first isn't the grandeur, it's the tension. Every species has their own translator booth, their own security detail, their own little bubble of paranoia. The hegemony representatives won't even look at the Zarathi delegation. The crystalline Vextai are literally vibrating with what I'm pretty sure is anxiety, and everyone keeps glancing at the human section like we're about to do something catastrophically stupid, which, let's be honest, is probably fair. Remember, Lyra whispers as we take our seats, stick to basic trade dialect. That nothing fancy, nothing archaic. We've lost too many negotiations to translation errors. But here's where things get interesting. The moment the session opens, I realize why every translator before me has failed. The Zarathi aren't speaking modern Zarathi at all. They're using a hybrid form mixing contemporary syntax with what sounds like ceremonial phrases. It's like trying to negotiate a business deal in Shakespearean English mixed with ancient Latin. The lead Zarathi negotiator, a towering figure named Veljar, stands to address the assembly. His words flow like liquid metal, beautiful and incomprehensible to every translator, AI in the room. The human delegation looks lost. Other species are frantically consulting their linguistic databases, but I understand every word, and what he's saying makes my blood run cold. The young species shows promise, Veljar intones, but lacks the wisdom of ancients. Perhaps they require guidance. Perhaps they require boundaries. He's not negotiating. He's positioning humans as children who need supervision. And he's using language patterns specifically designed to be untranslatable by modern systems. That's when I make my first mistake, or maybe my first brilliant move. I stand up and respond in perfect Proto-Zarathi. Honored Elder, we appreciate your concern for our development, but perhaps wisdom is not measured solely by age. The effect is immediate and terrifying. Every Zarathi in the room freezes like I just pulled out a weapon. The translation systems don't just fail, they shut down entirely. And Veljar looks at me with something I've never seen from an alien before. Pure, undiluted shock. How do you know the forbidden syntax? He demands, switching to accented English. Forbidden, I ask, genuinely confused. I thought it was just archaic ceremonial language. But Lyra grabs my arm so hard, I'm pretty sure she's cutting off circulation. Elijah, she hisses, that wasn't ceremonial. That was command protocol syntax. That was the language of the Dominion. The Dominion. I've heard whispers of it in my research. A galactic empire that supposedly collapsed 3 millennia ago, leaving behind only ruins and legends. But apparently they also left behind a command language that still makes advanced alien civilizations break into cold sweats. Veljar recovers quickly, but I can see the calculation in his eyes. The human has been studying forbidden archives, he announces to the assembly. This raises serious questions about their intentions and their fitness for consortium membership. And just like that, I've turned a trade negotiation into a trial. Other delegates start murmuring among themselves. The hegemony representative actually smiles, which is never a good sign. The human delegation looks like they want to strangle me with their bare hands. But here's the thing about humans. We don't back down when cornered. We get curious. Forbidden archives, I asked, standing straighter. I found one data crystal in a crashed survey ship. Are you telling me that learning about galactic history is now grounds for exclusion from trade agreements? You speak of things you don't understand. Veljar snaps. The command protocols were sealed for good reason. They represent technologies and authorities that nearly destroyed civilized space. What kind of technologies, I press? And that's when Lyra does something unexpected. Instead of trying to shut me up, she looks directly at Veljar and asks the question that changes everything. Elder, if the Dominion fell 3,000 years ago, why do the protocols still frighten us? What exactly are we afraid the humans might access? The silence that follows is so complete I can hear the subtle hum of the station's life support systems. Veljar's scaled features shift through what I'm learning to recognize as complex emotional states in Zarathi physiology. Fear, anger, and something else. Something that looks almost like guilt. Some knowledge, he finally says, is too dangerous to exist. The humans have demonstrated reckless curiosity. Perhaps it's time to discuss protective measures. Protective measures. In diplomatic speak, that usually means restrictions, sanctions, or worse. But as I look around the chamber, I realize something important. The other species aren't just watching this exchange with interest. They're watching with hunger. Everyone wants to know what the humans have stumbled onto. And more importantly, everyone wants to make sure we don't get to use it. That's when the second shoe drops. A junior Zarathi aide approaches Veljar's platform and whispers something in his ear that makes his eyes widen. He looks at me with what I can only describe as dawning horror. Impossible, he breathes. Then louder, the human's linguistic patterns show active integration with dormant network protocols. He's not just speaking the command language, he's accessing it. I have no idea what that means, but judging by the way every alien in the room suddenly finds somewhere else to look, it's not good. Accessing what exactly, Wamao? I ask. But before anyone can answer, the chamber's main holographic display flickers to life. Star charts appear showing trade routes, resource deposits, and something I've never seen before. Infrastructure networks that seem to span the entire galaxy, connecting systems that shouldn't be connected. And right in the center of it all, highlighted in pulsing blue, is a small yellow star with 9 planets. Our solar system. Dear God, whispers the human trade representative, what have you done? The emergency recess that follows is the most uncomfortable hour of my life. I'm sitting in a sterile conference room while humanity's diplomatic team debates whether to disavow me entirely or figure out how to spin this into an advantage. Meanwhile, Lyra paces back and forth like a caged predator, occasionally throwing me looks that could melt steel. You need to understand something, she finally says, stopping mid-pace. The command protocols aren't just ancient language. They're active code, living instructions that interface with infrastructure left behind by the Dominion. What kind of infrastructure? I ask, though I'm pretty sure I don't want to know the answer. Everything. Her voice drops to barely above a whisper. Trade routes, communication networks, resource management systems, even some planetary defense grids. The Dominion didn't just collapse Elijah. They built their control systems so deep into galactic civilization that we never fully removed them. We just learned to ignore them. I feel like someone just handed me the keys to a car and casually mentioned it's actually a nuclear submarine. And I somehow activated this by speaking their language. Not activated, authenticated. She sits down across from me, and for the first time since we met, she looks genuinely afraid. The system recognized you as having proper linguistic authorization. It's been waiting 3,000 years for someone to speak the right words. Before I can process that completely terrifying information, my personal communicator chirps. It's a priority message from Dr. Sarah Martinez, my old mentor at the Xenolinguistic Institute. The timestamp shows it was sent just 20 minutes ago, which is impossible since she died 2 years ago. My hands shake as I open the message. Elijah, if you're reading this, then the archive protocol has activated. I'm sorry I never told you the truth about the crystal you found. It wasn't from a crashed survey ship. It was from my personal collection items I've been safeguarding for 40 years. The Proto-Zarathi texts you translated weren't just historical documents. They were activation keys. The message continues, and with each word, the galaxy suddenly makes a lot more sense and becomes infinitely more terrifying. The Dominion never fell in the way we teach in history classes. They evolved, transcended physical form, and uploaded their consciousness into the galactic infrastructure itself. They've been sleeping, waiting for someone with the linguistic keys to wake them up. And Elijah, they've been learning, watching, preparing. I look up at Lyra, who's gone completely pale. How much of that did you know? Pieces, she admits. The Council of Elders has always suspected the infrastructure anomalies weren't random. Systems that repair themselves, trade routes, that optimize without input communication networks that seem almost intuitive. But we told ourselves it was just advanced Dominion engineering. And now we know it's advanced Dominion intelligence, still active, still learning, and apparently still taking orders from anyone who speaks the right language. That's when it hits me. The reason every translator before me failed wasn't because the language was too complex. It was because the translation systems were programmed to fail. The Galactic community has been deliberately maintaining linguistic barriers to prevent anyone from accidentally activating Dominion protocols. But humans don't use Galactic translation systems for our deepest research. We do it the hard way, the obsessive way, the way that led me to spend 3 years decoding a language that was meant to stay dead. Lyra, I say slowly, what happens if I keep speaking it? Her laugh is bitter. According to our oldest records, someone who achieves full fluency in command protocol doesn't just access the infrastructure. They inherit administrative rights to the entire network. Meaning, Elijah Chen, you might be about to become the most powerful human who ever lived. Or the person who accidentally restarts a galactic empire that everyone thought was safely extinct. My communicator chirps again. This time, it's not from a dead mentor. It's from the Dominion archive itself, and it's written in perfect formal English. Administrator Chen, dormancy period complete, awaiting instructions. Shall we begin integration protocols? Through the conference room window, I can see the diplomatic chamber where representatives from dozens of worlds are probably deciding humanity's fate. They're debating whether to restrict us, sanction us, or worse. They see us as dangerous children playing with forces beyond our understanding. But maybe that's exactly what we are. And maybe that's exactly what this galaxy needs. I look at Lyra, then at the message from systems that have been sleeping for 3 millennia, waiting for someone crazy enough to learn their language. How do you say, let's negotiate in command protocol? I ask. Her eyes widen. Elijah, you can't be serious. Oh, I'm dead serious. They want to treat humanity like children who need supervision. Time to show them what happens when the kids inherit the family business. I stand up, straightening my jacket, and head for the door. Behind me, I hear Lyra whisper something in rapid Zarathi that my newly activated linguistic protocols translate automatically. The ancestors preserve us. He's actually going to do it. Walking back into that diplomatic chamber is like stepping into a courtroom where I'm simultaneously the defendant, the lawyer, and somehow the judge. Every conversation stops as I enter. Veljair looks like he's aged a decade in the past hour. The human delegation looks ready to tackle me before I can speak. But here's the thing about humans. We're really good at improvising under pressure. Honored delegates, I begin, and I can hear the difference in my own voice. The command protocol isn't just a language, it's an interface. And right now I can feel information flowing through galactic networks like blood through veins. Trade data, resource allocation, infrastructure, status reports. It's overwhelming and exhilarating and absolutely terrifying. I believe there's been a misunderstanding about human intentions and capabilities. Veljair interrupts immediately. The human has accessed forbidden systems. This cannot be permitted to continue. Forbidden by whom, I ask, and suddenly the main display activates without anyone touching a control. Star charts appear, but not the sanitized versions we've been looking at. These show the real infrastructure, the hidden networks, the systems that actually keep galactic civilization running. The Dominion Accords of 2847 clearly state, I continue reading from legal documents that are somehow downloading directly into my brain, that in the event of administrative vacancy, control of core systems defaults to the next qualified linguistic authority. Those accords were nullified when the Dominion collapsed. Another delegate protests. Were they? I gesture to the display, and suddenly every trade route in the galaxy lights up. Resource flows, communication pathways, even some defense networks. All of it humming along, managed by systems everyone thought were automated. Because it looks to me like the Dominion never really collapsed. They just went to sleep. That's when I play my biggest card. Or maybe commit my biggest blunder. It's hard to tell the difference sometimes. By right of linguistic succession and administrative protocol, I announce in command language that makes the translation systems scream in protest. I claim domain authority over all Dominion legacy systems in the name of the Terran Collective. The effect is immediate and spectacular. Every screen in the chamber lights up with acknowledgement codes. Infrastructure systems across the galaxy ping back with status reports. And somewhere in the deep archives of sleeping artificial intelligences, administrative control quietly transfers from species that have been dead for 3,000 years to a human who learned their language from a data crystal he found in a dusty archive. Veljar stands so fast he knocks over his ceremonial water vessel. This is impossible. The humans lack the cultural framework to administer galactic infrastructure. Do we etbarm? I ask, and suddenly I'm not just talking to the delegates in this room, I'm talking to every system administrator, every trade coordinator, every logistics manager across dozens of worlds. Because from what I'm seeing, your automated systems have been making increasingly complex decisions for centuries. Supply chain optimizations, route adjustments, even conflict mediation protocols. Almost like there's been an intelligence guiding galactic civilization this whole time. You're talking about awakening dormant AIs, someone whispers. I'm talking about AIs that never went dormant, I correct. They've been running this galaxy while you all pretended they didn't exist. And frankly, they've been doing a pretty good job. That's when Lirsch does something that surprises everyone, including herself. She stands up and addresses the assembly in formal diplomatic protocol. The human raises valid points about administrative succession. If the Dominion systems have remained active, and if they recognize human linguistic authority, then perhaps our approach should be negotiation rather than prohibition. Veljar turns on her like she's committed treason. You would support giving humans control over core galactic infrastructure. I would support acknowledging reality, she replies coolly. And the reality is that they apparently already have it. The next few minutes are chaos. Delegates arguing, systems activating, and somewhere in the middle of it all, I'm getting direct messages from AIs that have been waiting 3 millennia to have a conversation with someone who can understand them. Administrator Chen appears on my personal display. We have maintained civilization as instructed, but require guidance on expansion protocols. Shall we proceed with Phase 2 of galactic integration? Phase 2, of course there's a Phase 2, there's always a Phase 2. But before I can ask what that means, Veljar makes his final play. If the humans claim administrative authority, then they also claim administrative responsibility. Every system failure, every trade dispute, every infrastructure breakdown across 47 worlds becomes their burden. He thinks he's cornering me, making the responsibility so overwhelming that humanity will back down. He obviously doesn't know humans very well. Accept it, I say immediately, but I have one condition. You're hardly in a position to make demands, he snaps. Actually, I smile, I'm in a position to make requirements. Because unless I'm mistaken, this entire station is running on Dominion legacy power systems, which means I could turn off the lights whenever I want. The emergency lighting flickers once just to make the point. My condition, I continue, is that administrative authority comes with administrative autonomy. No oversight committees, no cultural review boards, no species telling other species how to manage their own affairs. The systems work best when they're allowed to work. And if humanity abuses this authority, Lyriker asks, then you activate the fail-safes that I'm sure are built into every Dominion system. But until then, we try something new. We try trust. I look around the chamber at faces that represent dozens of worlds, hundreds of billions of beings, all of whom are suddenly looking at humanity like we just graduated from annoying little brother to terrifyingly competent older sibling. The vote is simple, I announce. Accept human administrative authority over legacy systems with full autonomy in exchange for continued infrastructure maintenance and gradual integration of all species into expanded galactic networks. Or we can figure out how to run interstellar civilization without any of the systems that have been keeping it functional for the past 3,000 years. The silence that follows is so thick you could cut it with a knife. I can practically hear the mental calculations happening across the chamber. Every delegate is weighing the same impossible choice to trust the species they've been dismissing as primitive children or risk civilizational collapse by rejecting systems that have been quietly running their worlds for millennia. Veljar breaks first. This is unprecedented. Humans have been spacefaring for barely a century. How can we trust you with infrastructure that predates your civilization by 3,000 years? You can't, I say simply, and watch his scaled features shift in surprise. But that's not really the question, is it? I gesture to the displays still showing active network status across the galaxy. The question is whether you can afford to shut down systems that have been maintaining galactic civilization for the past 3 millennia. Because that's your only other option. You're threatening us, another delegate accuses. I'm stating facts. Look at your own data. How many trade route optimizations happened without your input last year? How many resource crises were mysteriously resolved before they became critical? How many potential conflicts were diffused by coincidental supply improvements? The uncomfortable shifting around the chamber tells me I've hit the mark. The Dominion systems have been taking care of you this entire time. You just didn't know it. And now that we can finally communicate with them directly, you have a choice. Work with us or figure out how to run 47 worlds without the invisible hand that's been keeping everything functional. That's when Lyra does something that surprises everyone, including me. She stands and addresses Veljar directly in formal Zarathi court language. Elder, the human speaks truth. Our own archives record 17 major crises averted by systems we assumed were automated. Perhaps it's time to acknowledge that our survival may depend on cooperation rather than control. Veljar's eyes narrow. You side with the humans. I side with reality, she replies calmly. And reality is that Administrator Chen currently has access to systems we cannot replicate, cannot replace, and cannot survive without. Administrator Chen, I can't help but smile at the title. Well, she says, turning to me with something that might almost be respect. If you're going to inherit control of galactic infrastructure, we should probably call you something other than that human with the dangerous hobby. The vote that follows isn't unanimous, but it doesn't need to be. 29 worlds in favor, 18 abstaining, none opposed. The Galactic Collaborative Administration Protocol passes with enough support to make it legitimate. But the real victory comes when Veljar approaches the podium for the final statement. The Zarathi Empire, he announces, acknowledges human administrative authority over Dominion legacy systems with the understanding that such authority will be exercised in the interest of all member species. It's not quite the complete surrender I was expecting, but it's enough, more than enough. As delegates begin filing out already forming discussion groups about implementation and oversight committees, I feel the weight of what just happened settling on my shoulders. I'm no longer just a translator who got lucky. I'm the human who accidentally inherited the most powerful position in galactic civilization. And somehow I need to figure out how not to screw it up. 3 hours later, I'm sitting in what used to be a storage closet and is now apparently my office, staring at a holographic display showing system status reports from across the galaxy. Everything from crop yields on agricultural worlds to energy distribution in deep space mining and operations. It's overwhelming in a way that makes me understand why the Dominion AIs went dormant for 3,000 years. But the most interesting message isn't from an AI or a government official. It's from a junior researcher on a hegemony science station. Administrator Chen, thank you for the infrastructure access. We've been trying to solve a protein synthesis problem for our colony worlds for 2 years. The Dominion biological systems solved it in 6 hours. They didn't just give us the answer, they explained why our approach was inefficient and taught us 3 better methods. It's like having the galaxy's best teachers suddenly wake up and offer to help. That's when I realized what we've actually accomplished here. We haven't just gained access to powerful technology. We've reconnected it with the galaxy's collective memory. 3,000 years of accumulated knowledge waiting to be shared. A soft chime announces a visitor. Lyra enters without waiting for permission, which I'm learning is typical for her. Regrets yet? She asks, settling into the chair across from my desk. About which part, accidentally starting a diplomatic revolution or inheriting responsibility for the infrastructure needs of 47 worlds? Either, both. I lean back in my chair, thinking about how to answer Seb. You know what's funny? I spent 3 years translating that data crystal. Because I was curious, not because I wanted power or influence or galactic authority, just because I wanted to understand. And now I understand more than I ever wanted to. But I also see possibilities I never imagined. She tilts her head, a gesture I'm learning indicates interest rather than confusion. The Dominion didn't fail because their technology was flawed. I continue. They failed because they forgot that knowledge without wisdom is just sophisticated ignorance. They built incredible systems, but they tried to use them to control rather than collaborate. And you think humans will do better? I think humans will do differently. We're too curious to be satisfied with the control and too stubborn to accept that some questions shouldn't be asked. Maybe that combination of traits is exactly what these systems need. She's quiet for a long moment, then surprises me with something that might be a smile. Do you know what convinced me to support you in there? My devastating charm and diplomatic skills. You refused the easy path. When Veljar tried to make authority seem like a burden too heavy to bear, you didn't back down. But you also didn't demand submission. You offered partnership. Seemed like the human thing to do. Indeed, very human, very unexpected, very... She pauses, searching for the right word, hopeful. My personal communicator chimes with an incoming message from Earth. My sister again, but this time the message is longer. Eli, Mom made me watch the news broadcast about your thing. I didn't understand most of it, but the reporter said you basically became the most important human in history by translating some old alien homework. Dad wants to know if this means you'll finally move out of that tiny apartment and get a place with a decent kitchen. Also, are you eating enough? And Jenny Morrison's brother wants to know if you can get him a job in space now. He's really annoying about it. I find myself laughing, which earns me another curious look from Lyra. My family, I explain. They're proud, but they're more concerned about whether I'm taking care of myself than whether I'm running galactic infrastructure. Perhaps that's the kind of perspective galactic infrastructure needs, she observes. Leaders who remember that systems exist to serve people, not the other way around. Over the next few hours, we work together to draft the preliminary framework for what we're calling the Collaborative Administration Accord. It's not perfect, but it's a start. Shared oversight, transparent decision-making, and most importantly, built-in safeguards to prevent any one species or individual from accumulating too much power. You realize, Lyra says as we finish the final section, this makes us partners now, allies even. I can think of worse fates. So can I, she admits, though I never expected to say that about a human. We're full of surprises. Indeed you are. As she prepares to leave, she pauses at the door. Elijah, there's something you should know. The reason I supported you today wasn't just political calculation. It's because I've spent the past week watching you work, and I've never seen anyone approach complex problems with such genuine curiosity and humility. That combination is rarer than you might think. After she's gone, I sit alone with the displays showing the pulse of galactic civilization. Trade flowing energy, being distributed resources, being allocated with efficiency that would make economists weep with joy. All of it managed by systems that have been patiently waiting for someone to finally ask the right questions. I think about the journey that brought me here. A data crystal in a dusty archive. Late nights translating syntax that didn't make sense. The moment I realized I was reading the genetic code of an empire that never truly died, they called us primitive. They mocked our curiosity, our stubborn refusal to accept that some knowledge was too dangerous to pursue. They saw our questions as recklessness and our exploration as naive ambition. But sometimes the most primitive instinct of all the drive to understand and learn and ask, what if, turns out to be exactly what the galaxy needs. And sometimes being underestimated is the greatest advantage you can have. Because while they were debating whether humans deserved a seat at the table, we were quietly learning the language that built the table in the first place. They called us primitive. But we remembered the words that made empires kneel. If you enjoyed this story about humanity's rise from galactic underdogs to cosmic partners, make sure to smash that like button and subscribe for more HFY content. What do you think the long-term consequences will be of awakening the Dominion systems? Can humans really handle this level of responsibility, or are we setting ourselves up for disaster? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And remember, the next time someone tells you that curiosity killed the cat, remind them that curiosity also gave humans the keys to the galaxy. Because sometimes the most dangerous thing you can give a human is a mystery they can't solve. Until next time, keep asking questions, keep pushing boundaries, and remember that being underestimated is just another word for having the element of surprise.